Welcome to another edition of Two Up Front, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Baxter Colburn.
And this is Simon Provan.
Good evening to you, Simon. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Baxter. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to talk about the beautiful game from an American perspective, as we do here on Two Up Front, right here on Sports Radio America, as we do on Fridays from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can get us on Periscope as well whenever we decide to do this show. So we've got a few people tuning in right now, so hello, all of you on Periscope. None of this madness here with the Everton flag or this Portland Timbers craziness. Don't mind any of that stuff. It's just Simon being Simon, which you should. Well, I don't really have much of a bragging right, but I've got this on right now here in the Revolution polo shirt on, so it's a sad day.
Somebody's got to support them in the off season.
Exactly.
Baxter.
We cheer them very loud. Today is Jermaine Jones' birthday, so go Jermaine. Woo! I don't know.
Okay,
it's the little things in life
sure.
Revolution fans have to cheer about, okay?
Interesting way how he celebrated his birthday, going off on the ref. But I will say, rightfully so. He had every reason, because the handball that the ref didn't call for the Revolution, that was the exact same thing that happened over in DC's box. So
it was.
I understand, but you still got to keep your cool where you're not pushing the referee around.
Yeah, that's kind of an instant red card there. As soon as you make contact with the ref, they're like, no, it's usually a yellow card. So anyway,
it also sounds like Jones is walking away though from the game.
Yeah,
at least from the refs.
I've heard the rumors. Yeah, there was a good possibility of that happening, and now that it's kind of all being confirmed, especially after kind of how he went out. So
well, and with his tweet that he put out there of him walking away saying thanks Revs fans for the memories or something to that effect.
Exactly, yeah. So that's a very big possibility that something like that's going to happen. So, and if it does happen, we'll talk about it here on the show, because that's what we do. We love talking about soccer. We love talking about all things that revolve around the beautiful game, whether it is domestically or internationally. And like you mentioned, you can get us right here on Sports Radio America, but you can also get us on demand as well. If you love listening to the show or you don't catch it when we do it live, you can get us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and on Spreaker.com as well. And then social media, Simon, where are we?
Facebook, we are Two Up Front. On Twitter, we are at Two Up Front Soccer. Also, our handle for Instagram, same thing, at Two Up Front Soccer. Twitter, you are, there goes my phone. Twitter, you are at Baxter Colburn, and I am at Simon Provan.
Yes, indeed. A lot of great things to get to today. We're going to be talking about the MLS playoffs a little bit later on. There's been a sending off in New York, though, Simon, that I think we will talk about as well, but I don't want to jump ahead of myself because you need to make fun of me, because this is what you do on the show, is you make fun of me when I make outlandish comments. I call people posh, and now you're yelling at me because I mentioned a few weeks ago that Bob Bradley is not posh enough to coach in the Premier League, and you've never let me live it down since that point. But now there's something totally different that's going on that involves Bob Bradley.
It is, and this is what makes it so easy to not let you live it down. Bob Bradley becomes the first American coach to lead a team into European play. Stabæk there in Norway, they will at least finish third. They're guaranteed to finish third in the Norwegian League, which guarantees them, like I said, a spot in Europa League, at least in the qualifying. So they beat Bodo Glimt 3-2 over the. I'm sorry, IK Start 3-2 over the weekend. But if certain results go the way, if certain results go a certain way, that's what I'm trying to say. They'll end up in second, which may not sound like that big of a deal, but it is, because that means they go, instead of being in the qualifying rounds for Europa League, they go right to group play for Europa League.
Which is fantastic. And correct me if I'm wrong, this was a Norwegian team that Bob Bradley took from the ground up, basically, and made them
pretty
good.
Close to it. So what happened is that Stabæk, a few years ago, they were in European play because they kept pouring tons of money into the club. What ended up happening is they could no longer afford it, and they almost went bankrupt.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So they ended up getting demoted down to the second league there in Norway. Bob Bradley came in, got them promoted, or he came in right after they got promoted, but everybody was pretty much thinking that they would finish in last. Finished in ninth with Bob Bradley at the helms.
That's huge.
And now this year he gets them all the way up to at least third, very possibly second. He's, like as I said, he's actually not the first American coach to lead a team in Europe in one of the top leagues. Not that the Norwegian league is a top league, but you know what I mean, one of the top leagues in those countries.
Is that the Tipper League? Is that what it's called?
That's something like that.
That's what I thought it was, yeah.
But as Bob Bradley does, he was asked about the significance of being the first American to lead a team into Europe, at least. He was his humble self. He said, I've not thought about it that way. I've been lucky at many different moments to have teams that came together in a really strong way. I always remember that. When that happened yesterday, what went through my head was other days, whether it was with the Chicago Fire or with the U.S., when we beat Egypt and Spain Spain at the Confederations Cup, or the feeling we all had together after we beat Algeria and won the group at World Cup 2010. That's quite a list of accomplishments
No kidding,
that I think a lot of people forget about Bob
Bradley. Like whether I've done this or all of these great things and even this and that, but that's all great and all. But
yet, and he finishes it off by saying, I flash back to those days when the work of a group came together in a way that every single guy was proud and part of something special. And I think that's the one thing, no matter how you felt about Bob Bradley in his final days with the U.S. national team, what you can say is that he did bring players together.
He did.
He made them
believe.
He
was very, very good at that. And I think that's why we saw so much chemistry between players at that time, like Michael Bradley, Landon Donovan, Josie Altidore, a lot of those other 2010ers that really helped the United States start to make really a name for itself at the international level. And I understand that the hype going into the 2014 World Cup was different because of, we've got a new coach, we've got all these great young players. But 2010, the U.S. was still fighting for relevance at that time. And you can say arguments that they're still kind of doing that as well. But Bob Bradley helped them make that next jump. They helped put guys like Tim Howard out on the international stage where, unless you were a hardcore Everton supporter or a hardcore national team supporter, you didn't know who guys like Tim Howard were. And now you're getting that opportunity to really see that. And therefore, because of Bradley, you've seen that group grow ever since that point.
And one thing Bradley doesn't get credit for, people talk about Klinsmann all the time, and this is one of the things I do like about Klinsmann, is he has brought in a number of different players. But Bradley was doing that all the time as well. He did fall into what Arena fell into in his second cycle of the World Cup cycle, in that he started to rely on those guys that had proven him right, and he kind of had those glasses on, that narrow vision. So that haunted him there at the end. But Klinsmann, the difference I see there is that Bradley was looking for American players, where Klinsmann, yes, he's looking at some American players, but he tends to look for those players who are somehow citizens or qualified to be on the U.S. team.
Well, the German Americans as the best players, of course. But that makes sense, though, because Bob knew the domestic game very well, and Jurgen knows the international game, the European game very well. So they're taking what they know and just implementing it into the United States system. And some have worked. Both have had positives, both have had negatives to their campaigns going forward.
Right, and the last thing I'll say about this, what's interesting now is, we have talked about how Bradley has been contacted by other clubs, but the most ardent rumor out there right now is that he'll be in Ligue 2 in France next year with Le Havre. So if he does that, that means he actually won't be leading Stabæk through Europa League. So I've got mixed feelings about that.
Why would he leave?
More money,
I guess.
More prestigious league. If he can take,
I guess,
if he can take Le Havre from Ligue 1 to Ligue 1, well, now you are in one of the top flights.
That is true.
In Europe.
That is true. Something that no American has ever really done before. So you can definitely, I get that.
And obviously, he's a man who likes the challenge.
He does.
Absolutely. He was at Chivas USA. Oof. He took over the expansion Chicago Fire, won a MLS Cup with them, and he won a double that year with the U.S. Open Cup as well. Of course, there were only 12 teams in the league at that point. But nevertheless,
irrelevant.
He goes to Egypt, almost gets them to the World Cup, one series away.
I always forget that he was at Egypt after the United States.
Think about his time at Egypt, too. The league was shut down because of all the civil unrest out there, and yet he still took this team to go basically undefeated until they met Ghana in their final series. Ghana.
Oh, my gosh.
But yes, congratulations to Mr. Bob Bradley on a job well done over there in Norway.
Absolutely. Well, somebody that we will say that you can make arguments one way or another about how he did, but someone that is now looking for a new job is Jason Kreis. NYCFC announcing just this last week that they have decided to part ways, and he will no longer be a part of the organization going forward. And my initial reaction, I was shocked. I was shocked up until the fact that I realized that this is not a club that's owned by MLS owners. This is a team that is owned by Manchester City. This is the little brother of Manchester City who's going doing all the big brother cool things over in England. And then it's like, oh, right. You're the stepbrother mom and dad adopted, or you're the oops child. I guess we still kind of love you, but not that much.
Don Garber promised that wouldn't be the case, but it certainly seems like
100% it was.
The only difference I see between them and Chivas USA at this point is that one played in an actual soccer stadium, the other plays in a baseball stadium. Other than that, pretty much have the same thing going on. I pinpoint this, Baxter, back to when Kreis had called out all the players saying, it just seems there's some players who are not committed to this club.
Yeah.
And the one man to speak up and say, hey, no, that's not right, is a man who we thought signed with the club, certainly made a verbal commitment, but yet ended up going over to Manchester City. So, of course, I'm talking about Frank Lampard.
Oh, absolutely. And I think he proved every single person that follows soccer as a whole and ever thought that, New York could actually have a good opportunity to maybe make the playoffs. I honestly believe that if he had played the entire season, New York might have been sitting in a different spot right now. And I think that Manchester City assumed that. One of the biggest arguments that I heard is that when players come over from England, they don't understand what it's like to play in the United States. Yes, MLS is different. I get that. But it's different in the fact of that if you are a team in New York, you have to fly to California for a game, or you have to fly down to Texas. The climate, everything, the travel time, everything is 100% different, where in England, you can fly 45 minutes in any direction and get to any game you have to go to.
Well, it's funny. Lampard even came out and said something to that effect, in which somebody asked him, what are the hardest things that happened to you in this league? And he said, well, for the fact that we have to play on turf fields, that we've got all this travel, that I have to play in humidity, that I have to play in cold. It's like, hey, Frank, buddy, didn't you talk to any of your English teammates, or talk to David Beckham before you came over?
Exactly, and I heard that on the radio today, where they were saying, well, if David Beckham never told him that, then he's a terrible friend, because how would you not understand that? Even just having a general concept. I've only been to England once in my life, Simon, but if I were to go play, I know it's going to be rainy. I know it's going to be cold. I know they play on grass fields.
Right, which freeze sometimes, and that's the reason they have to postpone games.
Exactly.
But you know what you're getting into.
Exactly, and I'm not an expert about the playing surfaces or the weather in England, but I at least know that, and I feel like anybody that's ever stepped outside of a rock before and even remotely looked at the United States knows, there's a team in Colorado. They play a mile above sea level. It's going to be a different altitude up there, or it's going to be really hot down in Houston, in the middle of summer. Common sense.
It is, exactly. But you know what? That kind of, your comment about common sense, that to me sums up the Citigroup.
Yeah.
They buy Manchester City in their first year with the club. They do well because they have all that money. You can't expect to have the same result in a league that has a strict salary budget.
No.
You can't expect that. This is a group who obviously didn't understand that mid-season acquisitions rarely help you in that first year.
Exactly.
And so Pirlo and Lampard come over midway through. And one of the things that we find out is that basically Kreis was preparing the first half of the season for the second half of the season when Pirlo and Lampard would be there. And then after they do get there, of course, Lampard and Pirlo, now Kreis is trying to work them in, and Lampard comes in injured. So he never really had that consistent lineup that would put them on a good foot. So I think this is a huge mistake by NYCFC.
Oh, I absolutely agree. You just basically took, I don't want to call him, for the football people, I don't want to say he's Aaron Rodgers, but you basically took one of the most valuable coaches and turning it in that aspect, and just now said, hey, he's a free agent. Anybody that wants him is going to go do it. And how many MLS clubs that even have great coaches right now might say, look, you're great, but Jason Kreis is a free man right now. We want to go sign him.
Tell you what, I'd love to see Jason Kreis in Portland.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a Timbers fan.
I saw a rumor today that the Revolution might be looking at him, which would blow my mind because they just signed Jay Heaps to a new contract. But even still, could be some sort of a partnership.
Well, you know what I could realistically see happening?
What's that?
Is RSL letting Jeff Cesar go and bringing Kreis back.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. The evidence is in the pudding, right? Kreis retired as a player to take over as coach for RSL.
Yep.
This was when they were still basically an expansion club. It was 2 or 3 years into it. RSL was horrible. Then by 2006... they're walking off the field with an MLS Cup.
They were such a dominant, terrifying force for 5 years straight.
They were the first MLS club to make it to a CONCACAF Champions League final, in which they almost beat a very strong Monterrey that season. So NYCFC, this isn't England. It's not Europe. You can't just buy the players that you want. It's unrealistic to expect in your first year, especially with a roster that was in complete flux like the Baby Blues roster was, to make the playoffs in your first year.
No, absolutely not. You're asking way too much. And I knew that going into this, there was a good possibility that one of the two expansion teams might make the playoffs. My vote was for Orlando. I don't remember if your vote was for New York or not, but I remember our first, way back in the day when the season first started, we were talking about if one of these expansion teams are going to make it in. I had pulled for Orlando on that.
Yeah, one. I was right there with you. I thought New York could maybe surprise us, but I was never sold on them making it.
And so much of this too for Jason Kreis, it was all about what he was told to do. He had zero input, regardless of what people might say. Oh, he was the head coach. Well, that's great, but if you look at Seattle, Ziggy Schmidt, he runs that show. He knows exactly what's going on down to the littlest detail. He's in charge of bringing players over. For Jason Kreis, he woke up every day and it's like, hey, here's Andre Pirlo. Go. Oh, I didn't ask for him. Oh, I don't care. Here's Andre Pirlo. Go. Use him.
Right.
Here's Angelino, one of the weirdest, youngest left backs in the game. Take him. Go. Okay, what am I supposed to do with him? Play him. Okay, he doesn't fit our system. I don't care. Play him. Okay, sure.
Right.
And what are you going to say? No to Manchester City, who took you under their wing for an entire year?
And it wasn't really a taking under their wing, or was it more of, this is who we are, this is what you're going to do?
And how much of that was in the back room, like brainwashing, saying, this is the Man City way, you will do it or else.
Right.
And I'm sure there was other things that were thrown under the table for how extra money that he made. I'm sure there was all kinds of other things like that because of how much money the City Group has. But even still, I feel like even though I'm sure no one likes getting fired, but I think this might be a blessing in disguise because Jason Kreis may have walked out of that meeting going, thank you, God.
Exactly. Right.
Thank you.
Right. You know, I mean, when he was at RSL, he had Javier Morales. He built his teams around. Yeah, and he discovered him.
Yeah.
And you almost wonder if he tried bringing players like that into NYCFC and Citigroup was going, no, we want name players. We want American name players. We want European name players. So here's what I see happening. They're going to bring in some big time. I don't know. Maybe it's Carlos Ancelotti. He's sitting there in Vancouver.
The big rumor that I'm hearing is that it's going to be Patrick Vieira, the old French legend, who's also had so much success with the under-21s. But even still, that's great that you bring in a brand name coach where he's going to get respect right out of the door. What does he know about MLS?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is you look at the history of this league, we've had World Cup winning coaches in this league that have failed miserably because
terribly.
They don't get the idiosyncrasies of this league as compared to Europe.
It's not rocket science, but it's a totally different ballgame.
No, but you need to have somebody in your corner that understands how this league works.
Exactly.
And you had that in Kreis. You had a coach who understood the American mentality.
Yep.
You had a coach who understood how the league works. And you had a coach who was getting fans out to the game.
Exactly, because it's like, oh, Jason Kreis is coaching NYCFC. I don't care if we haven't won our first 10 games of the year. I want to go watch Jason Kreis.
It was a great move.
It was.
Everybody thought, oh, this group actually is surprising me. They made a good move.
Exactly.
I'm curious to see what happens with attendance once this club starts doing poorly.
It all depends on who that next coach is, I feel like. And maybe why not NYCFC just pull a weird move on everybody and bring in Bob Bradley? Just bring in Bob. Why not? No, that would be really weird.
I think Bob might just go, no, thank you.
And it's gonna have to be somebody European that has ties to either the Citigroup as a whole or someone that is European that likes a lot of money.
I know a European guy that may be out of a job very soon.
That's true. That's somebody that might be a good thing to talk about, which is a good segue into our 50-50 segment today, which is always a time where we like to throw different things about the soccer world at each other. And the way our 50-50 segment works is that Simon and I take a topic here in the soccer world and each take a side and voice our opinion about it. We each get 45 seconds. 45 and 45 equal 90, equaling a soccer match. Not realistically, obviously, because that would be way too long. We don't have that kind of time.
We don't even have that kind of a time for a show, period.
Exactly. I mean, if we finish under 90 minutes, we're usually both like, whoo! I mean, that's good. I mean, we like to talk a lot, obviously, but we need to know when to stop talking sometimes. All right, well,
that's what wives are for.
Exactly. We just sit and listen and just let them talk and carry it up for the rest of us. All right, so would you like? I went first last week.
Yes, I will be happy to go first.
It's your turn to go first this week. So 45 seconds on the clock, sir. On your mark, get set, and go.
So we're talking about whether Jose Mourinho should be fired, should be let go. If this was any other coach, I'd say yes. And you know what? I'm still saying yes. It's time for him to go. He has lost his team. It came out this week that there was a mystery player who had basically said, I'd rather lose for him than win for him. Nobody wants to play for him, and pretty much been nailed down to the fact that was Cesc Fabregas who came out to say that. So if you got a player like him saying, you know what, we don't want to win for this guy because he's lost us, that is on the coach's that's the manager's responsibility to keep the team on his side. But beyond that, look at the results. 3 losses out of their last 4 games, only 2 wins out of their last 5 games. Their last loss coming to Liverpool, a 3-1 loss. It's time to go.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, time to go. A lot of good arguments in that one. The results haven't been there. That's the cold-hearted, honest truth, regardless of what side I take about it. The results haven't been there recently.
Very true. All right, you ready? Ready to tear me apart? Ready to tear my argument apart?
Sure.
All right. Baxter, go.
This is a man who has won 501 games during his time in the soccer world as a manager. 501. He's lost under 150 games. This time at Chelsea, yes, has been his lowest winning percentage as a coach, where he's only won 57% of the game, or 57% of the games that he's coached for Chelsea. However, he's one of the most storied coaches in the existence of soccer. He knows what it takes to win. He's won over 500 games, for goodness sake. He's capable of taking players, regardless if they're happy or not. He can sell Cesc Fabregas. He can replace him. He can find anybody on the transfer market. The guys that play at Chelsea want to play for him, regardless of what one or two guys might be saying. Sure, they might not fit the system. He's more than capable of bringing in guys. He's won it in the past. He can do it again. Give the man some time. Everything's going to be fine. # trust Jose.
Time's up. You got a little extra time because I was laughing.
I did. I got like 0.5 seconds left.
You know, and I hear what you're saying, but history is history.
It is.
You know.
Did you know that he's won over 500 games?
I didn't know that.
No.
I didn't know that.
I did my homework.
But that was 500 games.
That's true.
That was how many games ago?
That's true.
It certainly wasn't the last two in the Premier League.
That's very true.
Hasn't been many in the Premier League this season.
No, it hasn't. And like I said, that's why I made sure to mention that this season for Chelsea has been his lowest overall winning percentage, his time with Chelsea right now, including last season, has been, or 2013, whenever he came, it's been his lowest winning percentage as a manager during his career.
Yeah, well, that to me says it all right there.
That's true.
He's got the players.
He does. He's got the appropriate players for it. All right, we're going to jump to a break. When we come back, the Champions League was in full action. Let's take a look at, finally, did some of the big teams that are supposed to win actually win a game? Or were some of those little teams playing the little nan-nana-boo-boo there on the time? We'll find out. We'll be right back. This is 2 Up Front. Welcome back to another edition of 2 Up Front, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Baxter Colburn.
And this is Simon Provan.
All right, Simon, the Champions League action, that day one of the 2-day-a-week phenomena that is the Champions League.
Match day 4.
Woo! The reverse fixtures for the clubs that played each other a few weeks ago are now playing each other again. So if your team was Real Madrid and you played PSG back on October 21st or 20th, you played PSG again. So now you're going back through your cycle here. And it was quite an interesting opening day of fixtures so far.
Yeah, what a weird day. PSG and Madrid, what a weird match they had.
What a weird goal.
It was very weird goal. But I'll tell you what, it didn't even look like Real came out to play today. You know, they were just kind of, I don't want to say walking around, but it almost felt that way. I mean, Zlatan and Cavani were playing plenty of bar music today. It almost seemed like all their cracks on goal just kept hitting that bar, just missing.
Form a trio. Should retire and form a duo.
Yeah, right. They can call it the ball never bouncing in their favor.
Ah, there you go.
But Nacho Fernandez, what a freak goal that man had today.
That was a good overall run by and he's a defender too, for those that don't know. Yeah. He's an outside back that was just following the ball. Goalkeeper came off his line. One time did over the top of the goal, or over the top of the goalkeeper. It was really a weird angle.
Well, Silva was the one who played it forward, and it took not Silva. It took a deflection off of Silva, and Cruz was the one who flicked it in the box.
Yes,
but Nacho Fernandez is the one who slid it home. But what was weird about it is you watch the PSG defenders. I didn't get all their names, but watching every single one of them just kind of stopped and watched the ball. Mm-hmm. Couldn't tell if they were thinking maybe it's going to go out of bounds, but they just stopped playing.
They did, and I think the PSG defender names that you're looking for are 50 million and 60 million. I think those are the two that you were looking for. But since it was an action like that might have been like 30 and 20 million, those guys weren't as paid enough to put enough on the line for PSG. But nevertheless, though, Real Madrid, with that victory, they have qualified for the round of 16, so they are through. Paris Saint-Germain still needs to figure it out. They have an opportunity to still get through. They have 2 more games to get out of the group. It's a good opportunity for them to do it, but even still, the fact is that they're not in right now.
Right. Shakhtar and Malmo still sitting there at 3 points. PSG sitting there with 7. So they do have control of their destiny when it gets down to it.
They are, yeah. Well, Shakhtar won 4-0 against Malmo today.
Yes.
So that shakes things up just enough.
Puts enough pressure on Paris Saint-Germain, that's for sure.
Yeah, they both have 3 points, as you mentioned. PSG has 7 points. There's 2 more games left, so hypothetically, if PSG doesn't win another game from here on out, or maybe they draw or something, Shakhtar, Malmo, one of those guys, maybe, doubtful, but maybe could sneak in. All right, we also had FC Astana and Atletico Madrid tie, so they go 0-0 in that one. Madrid, they sit in second place, in Group C with 7 points. Astana is in last place with 2 points. Didn't really take much away from this. Madrid proving that the Spanish teams are doing fairly well as they've been all tournament long. They'll go through. I really doubt that Galatasaray is going to find a way to sneak in. Atletico Madrid will be just fine.
Yeah, it's a Turkish club that sometimes pulls off nice results.
Exactly.
But
that's
sitting
all
on
it
4
is.
points as well. Madrid at 7 there.
Yep, nothing to really write home
Atletico,
about.
just to clarify.
Yes, Atletico Madrid. Real Madrid, they won 1-0. They've got 10 points in their group through their 4 games. A big win for the Red Devils of Manchester United. They got a 1-0 victory from Wayne Rooney.
Wayne Rooney, who broke the 404-minute goalless drought for Manchester United.
Finally over.
And he also ties now the club record with his 237th goal, tied there with Dennis Law. I like how he did it. With his head, that seems to be the Rooney fashion.
That is a very
It's
Rooney
either a
thing
header or it's just a smattering of an awesome shot.
A stunning volley.
He did have a couple times in front of goal where he was stumbling over his feet, or CSK, the Moscow defenders were getting there just in time. But again, I know the fans have been really disgruntled with Manchester United, as well as they should be, but they certainly came out and played well today. PSG certainly could have used Manchester United's defenders on the day. There was a point where it looked like Moscow was going to go up 1-0. De Gea got beat pretty badly on the play, and 2 United defenders come in, sliding in, just in time to keep the draw alive. The ball ended up out of bounds, and just a minute later, the man we were talking about, Wayne Rooney, hero of the day, goes in and gets that beautiful header.
There'll be
into the goal.
Sung in the pubs all throughout Manchester tonight.
So, but Baxter, there was not a single shot registered on goal by CSKA. So I'll tell you what, if Manchester United starts putting their chances away like they should have in this game, they'll be a dangerous team the rest of the way through this competition.
Will. Yep, exactly. And I think that this helps, though, Wayne Rooney going forward because he struggled in the Premier League as well. This allows United to say, hey, look, we beat a decent team in CSKA Moscow. Now we can go back to the Premier League and start continuing to dominate the top 5 in the Premier League.
And they're not doing horrible either. I mean, they're sitting in second place.
Exactly. They're not doing bad.
If I remember that correctly. They do play PSV in 3 weeks. They win that game, they are through.
Yep, because they're only on top of the group right now with 7 points. PSV Eindhoven and VfL Wolfsburg both have 6 points. Moscow could still make a run. They've got 4 points. So watch for those 3 bottom teams to duke it out these last 2 games of the Champions League group play.
Yes.
PSV Eindhoven, as we just mentioned, they jumped into second place with a 2-0 victory over Wolfsburg.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I didn't get a chance to watch that game at all or even check on the highlights, so I'm going to have to pull myself out of this conversation.
I'm going to pull myself out with you.
You were working or something like that, making money? Or
I don't know.
Getting paid to...
That's what I tell the wife that I do. I don't know. I just sit on my computer and look at soccer highlights all day. No, I had to do things and stuff for work. So PSV Eindhoven, second place now in Group B. So Wolfsburg, I would have expected a little bit better out of them from Champions League play as a whole. There was so much hype about them coming into this. Julian Drexler, everybody that's kind of circled around. They've got Dante from Bayern Munich. This team should be playing at a higher caliber than they are right now. However, I know some folks are more excited about what's going on in the Bundesliga than they are about what's going on in Champions League.
Yeah, you certainly hope that the Bundesliga doesn't start doing what Premier League's doing right now, the clubs anyways,
Yeah.
with here we are talking about the clubs doing poorly in Champions League, and yet now I think they're finally getting the message that, oh yeah, we got to start doing well.
And I think a lot of that really does, you do need to take those first 3 games of your Champions League play, and I think this is maybe why they do it 6 games, is because they get it. That these teams are not just focusing on this tournament. That's why you can get away with that kind of playoff format in the World Cup and the Olympics, because this is all you're doing with your players and your teams at that time. You're not trying to pull them in 8 different directions like they're being pulled back at home.
Sure.
So giving them 6 games gives them an opportunity to check themselves and say, okay, let's try this one more time. That was not our best performance. We'll get them again one more time on the home or away fixture, depending on what it is, and we'll be just fine. Sometimes that works out well for some teams, sometimes that doesn't. We saw Benfica go 2-1 on Galatasaray. That was another good result for Benfica. They're trying to stay relevant. Another Portugal team, that is proving that they are capable of doing things. Even though they might not be one of the best names in world soccer, Benfica still finding ways to try to stay semi-relevant.
Sure, right. Yeah.
The big group, though, that has a lot of great teams and players in it. Manchester City went 3-1 over Sevilla FC. Big game for them. City continuing to assert their dominance from all aspect side of things. It just was a great performance from them start to finish.
It was. I mean, they were up 2-0 within the first 11 minutes. A goal from Sterling, who's been a great pickup from Liverpool for City. Ferdinando had the second. Sevilla did make it interesting, though. Tremolinas had a goal in the 25th minute, and it actually wasn't the goal that was tremendous. It was the solemn run by Koke, or Coke, however you say his last name there. It's spelled like Coke. I'm going to go with Coke, because I could go for a Coke right now.
Yeah, it's his brother Cola.
There you go. But he beat 2 Manchester City defenders in succession, just slalomed his way through them, flicked the ball across the box, and Tremolini puts the goal away. But Bonet came up in the 38th minute to seal the win.
Yes, indeed,
for Manchester City.
So now they sit well atop their conference, their group. Their group. I don't know. I got all kinds of stuff in my head right now with sports. But another surprising result, though, was the Italian giants Juventus. They drew 1-1 with Borussia Mönchengladbach. A very interesting game. Borussia was ahead in this game.
They were. Not only were they ahead, but Fabian Johnson got his first Champions League goal ever. So a U.S. international puts a goal in for Mönchengladbach.
Yes.
What made this interesting is that in the 53rd minute, Juventus goes down 10 men.
Mm-hmm.
Hermanis gets the
Although they were already leading it, they had drawn level at that point.
That's true. They had drawn level, but then they held on for the rest of the game, so they end up
huge
1-1. So speaking of Bundesliga clubs not doing well, Mönchengladbach cannot advance. They're sitting on 2 points, and they are.
Yep, they are done.
They're done.
That's big though for Fabian Johnson to score that goal. I'm sure Jurgen Klinsmann is like, see, the German Americans, they know what to do. Best player in the world.
Hey, Fabian Johnson, I've never had a problem with him.
No,
I think he's done quite well.
It's nothing we can do about it. Anyway, AS Roma takes on Bayer Leverkusen. Chicharito, not only is he trying to take the Mexican team by storm by saying, hey guys, look, I can still score bunches of goals, but Bayer Leverkusen is probably thinking, hey, this is one of the best signings we've ever done in a long time. He's coming in scoring goals left and right for them.
Yeah, he's doing a wonderful job there. It's makes you wonder, should United have really let him go? Or is he finally in a system that knows how to use him?
More than likely, yes. I mean, how can you go from so many top-tier teams and not be used properly? Real Madrid, well, that's their own fault because they have Ronaldo, so therefore they're already at a disadvantage of that. Even Manchester United, though, plenty of guys on that team to give Chicharito the ball, never had a lot of good success. Bayer Leverkusen, can you name more than one player on Bayer Leverkusen, Simon?
Let me think. No.
Okay, and that's probably why. And that's why you've got a guy like Chicharito that's going to get the ball because they're a team. They're not centered around one or two guys that are saying he needs to have the ball. Give the ball to Ronaldo. No. In Bayer Leverkusen, they want to win as a team. They don't care who's going to score the goals. Chicharito might be one of the guys that ends up being one of the names that we recognize, but Bayer Leverkusen's going about it the right way. That's why they're having so much success right now.
Speaking of Bayer Leverkusen, allow me to just step over to the side for a little bit.
Please.
The Milwaukee Torrent announced yesterday that they had hammered down a partnership.
That is huge.
With Bayer Leverkusen. It's going to be focused on the youth academies, but they will benefit each other. So we'll have to have owner Andy Davi back in here to talk a little bit about that. But that's exciting to see.
That's very big.
Future Milwaukee club
having
a relationship with a Bundesliga club.
That's huge. That's absolutely huge. Maybe Chicharito will come on loan.
Oh, there you go.
That would be so funny. Oh, my gosh. All right, other action taking place on Wednesday. Barcelona taking on BAT Borussia. Barcelona's going to ride Neymar until they die, basically. There's only so much that he can do right now with Messi being out injured. Messi announced that he's going to be out for the El Clasico as well, so he won't be a part of that storied rivalry game. So Barcelona will take this game, not really worried about it. I didn't offer my prediction for the last one. I've got Leverkusen winning that game also.
Yeah, I do as well. Yes.
The big game, I feel like
real quick. Do you think Messi's actually injured, or do you think this tax evasion stuff is really?
I'm sure it's got a little bit of both. I mean, that his initial injury was a big deal. Like he did actually get hurt and did have to go. through
come on, you're ruining my conspiracy theorist.
I'm sorry. No, it was all a ruse. FIFA paid him off. I'm so sorry. Sepp Blatter was the one that called him and said, "Hey, get injured."
Right.
You're a soccer player. You're good at that. Fake an injury. All right, Arsenal and Bayern Munich. Arsenal won this fixture last time by a resounding score. Do they have it in them again, Simon, to take out the German Giants?
Do they have it in them? Yes, they do. I think they do. They're finally Giroud's finally playing well up top.
But the big issue, though, is they're Theo Walcott-less and they're Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain.
That's true. That's true
as well. We saw what happened. That's why they lost to Sheffield Wednesday. Among other reasons.
And by the way, it's the Capital One Cup. We were both wrong. It's not the Carling. It used to be called the Carling Cup. It's Capital One Cup.
I'm pretty sure it's Capital One, but I didn't. I trusted your knowledge.
Well, you had said Carlington, so I was.
I didn't know what I was talking. I was Capital One Cup in Carlington. I just put it all together.
It's good. It's good. It's good. They don't have those guys, but they're still. It's the Carling Cup. If you remember, Capital One Cup. If you remember what Wenger said,
Simon?
There you go. Had said he's not really concerned about that tournament. So didn't really. I mean, he totally admitted that he wasn't. They weren't trying to do anything.
No, they didn't care. They're like, whatever, Capital One. When did that matter about
this
anything?
Is Champions League. I think
he's probably got American Express. He doesn't care. Anyway, so Arsenal, Munich. I like Munich in this game, Simon, because of all the injuries to Arsenal. Regardless of how well Petr Cech has been playing, Arsenal is going to really miss Theo Walcott and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Yeah, and they actually really need to get a win because they're sitting on 3 points in third place in Group F. So we're talking Arsenal here. Bayern Munich, of course, on top of goal differential, 6 points, tied with Olympiacos, but they have their +6 goal differential to Olympiacos -1.
Yeah.
So Arsenal need this win. They need a win.
They do. They desperately need a win, and I just don't think it's going to be in this game, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen for them.
All right. Looking at the remainder of the games, Dynamo Zagreb and Olympiacos. Can take it or leave it, honestly. I'll go Dynamo in this game just for the heck of it.
Taking Olympiacos.
There you go. Why not? I don't really care, so why not? Speaking of a team that needs a win, though, Chelsea play Dynamo Kiev. You'd like to think this is a game on paper Chelsea should win, but trouble in paradise.
I'll tell you one thing. If they lose this game, if Chelsea loses, Jose's out.
Absolutely.
He's gone.
There's no...
Done.
Even what if they draw? What if they go the Brendan Rodgers way and they draw?
Done.
Still gone.
They need to win.
Okay,
they
Chelsea.
need to win.
Because I'm a team Jose, I'm going with Chelsea winning this game.
I want to see him fight.
I know you do. I know you do.
That's terrible for me to say. No, Kiev, they've been doing well. Sitting on 5 points there. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about them. I'm not going to lie to you and try to make it like I've been watching them play.
You can tell me if you don't.
But I do know how poorly Chelsea's been. So I think they're going to lose.
Okay, understandable. FC Porto and Maccabi Tel Aviv. I got Porto. They're sitting on top of that group, doing very well for themselves. 7 points to Tel Aviv 0. Tel Aviv's just happy to be there. That's all it really comes down to.
They haven't scored a goal yet, Tel Aviv.
So if there ever a time for Chelsea to... Oh, no, Chelsea doesn't... Chelsea's got to play one more time. Could be crucial. KAA Ghent and Valencia. I've got Valencia winning this game. Ghent, sure, they've got 1 point, but not really thinking much of anything of it. Valencia, they got 6 total points. They're 3-0-2, or they're 2-0-1, pardon me, in group play. Valencia will win, and they will advance as well, along with when Zenit beats Leon as well.
I'm right there with you. Both picks. Yep. Zenit, I think, will end up being I was going to say the only team with a perfect record, but yes, that is true. They would end up being the only team with a perfect record. I think they'll this group is so weak. I don't know. Maybe Valencia sneaks out a win here in this group at some point over Zenit. But I wouldn't be surprised if Zenit...
They got to play each other once more, so that is very possible. But Zenit and Valencia will both get out of this group.
Yeah, without
I think
a doubt.
I had maybe gone on a limb early on and said that Leon might sneak out, but I think I was just talking crazy at that point.
Well, you said the same thing about Sevilla, so...
That is true. I don't always know what I'm talking about, only 97% of the time. Or 56% like Jose.
Hey, do you want to review our picks for MLS play-in rounds?
Yeah, right. I did real well on those. Real well.
I really do well, so when I do, I gotta...
No, you gotta rub it in. I understand that completely. What did you do for that Portland-Vancouver game? You called Portland winning that game, didn't you? Or did you go conservative and go tie on me? I think I called it tie.
I'd have to go back and listen to the show.
I think I called it tie.
We didn't call those yet. That's why. We only did the play-in.
Right. That's right. We did the play-in games. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that. That was just a hot mess.
But what about that? We'll get to it later, but that shootout between Portland and Sporting Kansas City, my goodness.
How crazy was that? Speaking of crazy, Simon, it's only fair that we mention the word crazy and Sepp Blatter and FIFA all in the same sentence because they go hand in hand. You look in the dictionary against crazy or any weird word that describes, conspiracy, chaos, whatever.
Organized crime,
you'll see Al Capone right next to Sepp Blatter. It all works out very well. Now, you brought an article to my attention that is dated, but also about a story that is
It's dated, but it's not, right?
It is. It's current news in terms of when it was published, but it's an old thing, so I'll let you explain
it. Well, the old part of it is for the fact, if you haven't heard, it seems the 2006 World Cup, most people have heard this who follow this, may have been bribed as well. The one that made it into Germany.
Never would have guessed.
So the problem is that there was a transfer of 6.7 million euros that the German World Cup committee, Franz Beckenbauer, be the man whose name is attached to this money, was given to FIFA so that then in return, FIFA somehow gave the German World Cup Committee another 252 million euros for some type of quote-unquote grant. So that was the thing that people heard about a few weeks ago. Well, the German authorities have now gotten involved.
Of course they have.
It's amazing how since the FBI started getting involved in all of this, how the Swiss authorities are getting involved, and now you've got the German authorities. So they went into the German Soccer Federation, basically, and did a raid on them. Because what they're saying is if you guys really got this $252 million, you never claimed it on your taxes.
Jeez.
So they're not only facing possible issues with the Swiss government for the bribe, but they're facing very heavy possible ramifications with the German authorities now as well. And the thing about the authorities getting involved in this is that these guys can't just hide anymore.
No.
They have to give what the authorities are asking for. And if they can't provide it, there's going to be ramifications there.
Exactly. And I think from a legal perspective, as you mentioned, this is something they can't hide from anymore. They need to fess up and say, look, this is what happened, regardless of if we're proud of it or not. You can't continue to hide, and I'm glad that the U.S. has finally stepped in. I'm glad Switzerland, Germany, everyone is kind of banding together saying, look, FIFA, we get it. You have done some pretty nasty stuff. Now is the time for soccer as a whole to really step up and say, enough is enough. Down with the reign of this corrupt FIFA. Let's pitch a whole new FIFA world, as it were.
Exactly.
And let's move forward together instead of all this divide and conquer old school risk game.
Look, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, got in tons of trouble for all of the corruption that was going on there. The best thing that ever happened is that corruption got discovered. The IOC is still together, and it's been cleaned up for the most part.
Yeah, it has.
So it seems people, for the most part, trust the IOC. I don't know anybody that can honestly sit there and trust FIFA, especially when Sepp Blatter, taking this a step further now, comes out this week and basically says, oh, yeah, the 2018-2022 World Cups were basically agreed upon before we voted. So here's a man who's saying, hey, I have nothing to do with this. All this corruption. I there was no way I could know this was going on. And yet then he comes out and says, oh, yeah, I knew about it.
Well, is he really feeling like he's just completely infallible? Like there's nothing that he can say that's going to convict him of anything bad?
I think that since he's been suspended for those 90 days, he realizes the end is coming, and he's trying to go down punching.
I think so, yeah. And he's just going to throw all things out to the wind and say, you know what, screw it. As you mentioned, like he's just going to go out punching, start dropping things. I wouldn't be surprised if more stuff comes out in the following weeks about different scandals, or, oh, yeah, I knew about that for sure, or, yeah, I didn't say that I knew about that, even though I did, and I did pay this guy a lot of money, but, I was because we're good friends, and whatever. I thought his country would do a good job. No, you don't do that.
No, well, here's his exact quote about the World Cups. It was agreed that we go to Russia because it's never been in Russia, Eastern Europe, and for 2022 we go back to America. And everything was good until the moment when Sarkozy, who was the president of France, came in a meeting with the Crown Prince of Qatar. And at lunch afterwards with Mr. Platini, he said it would be good to go to Qatar. And that is what changed Platini's vote. So if Sepp Blatter is saying, no, I knew about all this, you then can't turn around and say, I didn't know any corruption was going on.
No.
This man he's
basically convicted himself because of that.
Exactly.
And I think that is one of the many reasons why he will go down in flames. And I'm glad of it. He's
deservedly
good.
so.
I want him to go to jail for all the crimes that he's committed. He's basically fessed up saying, oh, yeah, I'm well aware of what's going on.
And FIFA's supposed to be a non-profit organization. He comes
just
out
like
and
the NFL is supposed to be a non-profit organization.
Right.
Don't get me started.
He says, since I became president of FIFA, we have made FIFA a big commercial company.
So what? When is it about the soccer? Enough of the commercialism.
Yes.
You are a governing body of soccer, not a governing body of soccer that, oh, yeah, and we also make crap tons of money. That's completely against what they're supposed to be doing.
And for him to claim that the FBI is going after FIFA because of the U.S. not getting the World Cup, the FBI could care less about
You think they
soccer.
even realize they're probably like, who's FIFA? Like, oh, they do, okay, soccer. I think my son plays
And
FIFA.
then they say, oh, wait a second, they've got guys in our country that are doing things with money that you shouldn't be doing. Let's go after these guys.
Yeah, exactly. They're more concerned about the
about.
government aspect of it than the soccer aspect. You might have that one guy that's like, yeah, go soccer, but they'll be like, all right, be quiet, Jim. All right, we're going to a break. We'll be right back. More coming here on 2 Up Front. Welcome back to another edition of 2 Up Front, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Baxter Colburn.
And this is Simon Provan.
Remember, if you, like Simon and I, if you like us a lot, sorry, Simon, I was like, and you're done talking. It's my turn to talk. Enough of this.
I wish my name was Joe. Maybe you'd pay attention to me.
Right. No one cares. Go away. No. Anyway. A quick reminder for all of you that you can get us right here on Sports Radio America from 3 to 6 Eastern on Fridays. The beautiful people at Sports Radio America providing us with 3 whole hours to talk about the beautiful game from an American perspective. We love them. We thank them for all that they do for us. And we also love you that follow us on Facebook and social media as well. You can get us on Facebook at 2 Up Front. We are also on Twitter at 2 Up Front Soccer, at Baxter Colburn, at Simon Provan. There's double R's there for the Provan.
There you go.
All right, Simon, what's going on? You said you had a question for me?
Yeah, the guy that you named Jim, when somebody says, oh, you know about soccer, and does he turn around and say, yes, I do, nana boo-boo?
Probably what it came down to, yes. And they're like, all right, Jim, you're not going to go anywhere. See, I honestly bet you, though, that there is probably that one guy, but then some of those other guys that are like, I don't know what soccer is, but I know my son plays FIFA. So they're like, are we going after the video game? It's like, no, it's not the video game.
Well, speaking of FIFA, I do want to say one of the good things that did come out of this so far. So Traffic Sports USA was one of those companies that was involved with the FIFA scandals. They did own the Carolina Railhawks as in the NASL, and Traffic actually played a huge part in the NASL. So NASL said we can't be involved with Traffic anymore. So that made a lot of people worried about the Carolina Railhawks, whether that club would stay in existence, and just reported a few days ago that Stephen Malik, who's a local man there in North Carolina, graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, has bought the Carolina Railhawks. So it's another club that will stay alive there in the NASL.
Way to go. Keeping it alive. I mean, I feel bad for the NASL. I feel like they're like the little. I feel like I keep making the little brother comparison. They're the little brother that nobody cares about. They're the middle child because USL is doing really well, and MLS is like, oh, USL. It's like, oh, NASL. That's right. You're a thing.
Well, I think part of that is when the NASL first came out, they basically came out and said we're going to compete with MLS.
Yeah, well, good luck with that, though.
Right, they got some fun clubs in there. They got some clubs doing well. You got the Indy 11, been around for a couple of years now. Peter Wilt of the old Chicago Fire and of the old Milwaukee Wave's still around. They're both still around. Anyways,
details.
98 people.
One more time.
What time is it? Okay.
not that late.
9,800 in attendance on their average, but the NASL's averaging just under 6,000 a game.
That's not terrible.
Well, you think about it. That's the second division. That's actually pretty darn good. I mean,
I was going to say, how big are these stadiums that they're filling?
Exactly. I think I've told you I've been to the San Antonio Scorpions Stadium. That is a beautiful 8,000 seat soccer specific stadium. It's really
and they're
really
averaging
incredible.
6,700 a game.
Yeah, so they're almost filling up that stadium.
Yeah, that's
it's
perfectly
all right.
fine.
Again, when I was a kid, man, these numbers were
MLS numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
You were lucky if you got 9,000 at a game.
And speaking of MLS attendance, Baxter, I'm glad you brought that up.
You're welcome.
This is not me tooting my own horn. This was actually easy to see, but one of our very first shows I had talked about I believe was that I think MLS will finally crack that 20,000 average attendance mark. Now, look, they got a lot of help. They had 2 expansion clubs this year that were well supported, Orlando and what's that other club? Oh, we talked about them
Manchester
before.
City.
That's right, Manchester City, baby, Blues, whatever.
Yeah.
Orlando averaging 33,000 basically. Cool thing about that is they're expanding their stadium that they're already building to include even more in there. Of course, NYCFC at 29,000 people on their average attendance. But point is, I had said I believe it'll crack that 20,000 average attendance. They actually topped 21,000 for the season. 21,500. So
give yourself a hand, MLS. Well done.
Once again outpacing the NBA and the NHL. And it's funny, when I was younger, too, we talk about how these teams are doing horrible in attendance. I mean, you had teams not even cracking 10,000 a game. By the way, it also helped that Chivas USA doesn't figure into the equation anymore.
Thank God. Oh, my gosh.
But
look, fans.
Colorado Rapids averaged the least amount in attendance, 15,657. When I was a kid in the 3rd or 4th year of MLS, that was a top number.
That's huge. I do find it interesting looking at this list, Simon, that the team that was the best in the Western Conference is the 18th overall on this list for attendance.
15,981 for FC Dallas.
How crazy is that?
Well, I'll tell you, I know exactly what the answer to that is, and many MLS fans can tell you what the answer to that is. They were one of the first ones to build a soccer-specific stadium, as was the Chicago Fire, who are only averaging 16,000 a game. Now, of course, the Fire has other issues with how badly they've been playing.
True.
But these are stadiums that are way outside of downtown.
Yeah. I've heard it's just a pain to get to the Chicago Fire Stadium.
It is a pain. I've been there a few times. It's way down. And we're talking about coming from Milwaukee, so take that for what it's worth. But it still is. I mean, it's 45 minutes to an hour of a drive from downtown Chicago to Bridgeview. So it's quite a drive. But then you got these other teams. Obviously, Seattle plays at Sea-Link.
And I'm glad that they finally opened up the rest of the stadium, too.
Yes.
Because that was a big issue for a while. It's like, we're selling out, but we need, we could definitely fill the stadium. Because they were averaging like between 20 and 30,000. Like, we can sell. Well,
I think they've always been up in like that 36 range.
I think
but
so.
But then they opened it up more and more.
They did, yeah. I don't know if they haven't opened it up all the way, I don't think.
No.
Because I think they can put like
for certain games,
67, I think they can
put
there.
Yeah, when they play Portland, they open it up all the way. But it's for special games.
Yeah.
But otherwise, still, to be averaging 44,000 fans a game, hey,
huge.
That's impressive.
That's absolutely huge. How many soccer players? I mean, I know Old Trafford can hold a ton of people, but how many players that either come over from Europe and say, oh, MLS is going to probably have, 20 people and a dog there. It's like, no, you're playing in front of 44,000 people at Seattle. That's a massive atmosphere. That's going to be crazy.
Absolutely. Or even, talking about clubs like Toronto and LA averaging the nearly 24,000.
Both with soccer-specific stadiums.
Exactly. And, of course, Portland, I'm going to throw them out there. Sellout after sellout after sellout. True sellouts.
Yeah.
They're selling every ticket, every seat that's in that stadium.
How many seats do they have? Do you know?
It's what's there is 21,142.
Okay.
In their first couple of seasons, they actually weren't selling that many tickets because they did have to have part of it closed off due to fire codes or something like that.
Whatever.
Nevertheless, I will say I don't think the league will do this well next year. You're going to see some fall off with the expansion clubs. I think
Orlando, I think, will stay hot.
They will, but if they're in their new stadium, they don't seat 32,000. I think it'll seat 28,000.
But even still, it'll be sold out every time.
It will.
Orlando's not going to lose fans. They're just going to have more fans that are going to want to play, which is going to be good for the organization because they're going to be desired to go after.
Absolutely.
And they'll be sharing some time with Orlando Pride as well, so that's going to work out in Orlando
Pride's
true.
But,
aspect also.
San Jose had their new stadium. They're averaging nearly 21,000. I don't know if they're going to get those numbers next year.
Yeah, I don't know. They made a decent run this season. They didn't make the playoffs, but they still have a pretty good... they did a pretty decent job. I'm surprised Sporting Kansas City was as low as they were, and I think that's maybe because Sporting Park is a smaller.
Yeah, they averaged 19,687, but that's near sellouts every time.
It is,
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
There's nothing they can do about that.
No,
that's just how big
the
stadium is.
Right. But again, I'd rather walk into a stadium that seats 19,000 and have it oversold by a little bit, and have a sellout and have that great atmosphere that they have in Sporting Park, rather than playing in a football stadium that you can't get anywhere near a sellout. And this is not
I was just going to say,
the Revolution.
I was going to bring that up exactly. I mean, they average 19,000. They play at Gillette Stadium. Gillette Stadium can hold over 65,000 people at it. And the only one time I think that ever has been a semi-full stadium was during the playoffs last year when they had a deep run going on. They had, I forget how many, I think they might have had 30 or 40,000 people at the game, which is like the first time that the Revolution have ever had that many people at a game ever.
Well, they did have, in 2002, I think, that MLS Cup final. They sold out the stadium for that.
That's right.
But that's, your point's still very well taken.
Yeah, and a lot of folks are still complaining about whether or not that the Revolution should get a soccer-specific stadium, if Robert Kraft even cares. There's all that BS, and it's hard when the playoff push for MLS is mid-NFL season. Because as soon as it's NFL season, Bob Kraft and company are like, peace, Revolution, don't even care.
Exactly. But I'll tell you what, the players, if we're looking at one thing out of this to the future, the players, when their next round of CBA negotiations, man, they got to put their feet in the sand.
Absolutely.
I don't want to see anybody go. I don't want to see any lockouts. I don't want to see this league go on strike. But it's getting ridiculous for these owners to continue to say, we're losing money, we're losing money, we're losing money. They've got a nice TV contract that's partnered with U.S. Soccer.
They're going to be just fine.
Right. So I think it's time that these players say, you know what? No. Now, the risk there is that may put a lot of these players out of a job. Because if those pocketbooks really open up, some of these mid-level MLS players won't have jobs anymore.
That is true.
That's the risk. That's the calculated risk.
But it also does depend, I feel like, of how many folks from across the sea want to come over, and play in MLS too. Because it's one thing to have a ton of money if you're an MLS team, but it's another to actually say, oh, XYZ from Juventus, XYZ from Manchester United want to come play for us. Well, how realistic is that, though?
I think in 5 years.
In 5 years.
It'll be realistic.
I suppose that is when the next CBA is, in 5 years.
Or 4 or whatever. Season's over now.
Yeah, no, that's very realistic, I could suppose. All right, well, I think the thing that we've been waiting the longest to talk about on the show that I've been looking forward to the most about talking to is the MLS playoffs. They are in full swing right now. The knockout rounds are over. The first legs are over, so let's go back and recap some of the action. Starting in, Simon will have you take the Western knockout rounds first, and then I'll go to the East. So after you, sir.
Sure. Well, I think we both predicted that Seattle would finally get over their LA Galaxy jinx.
Huge victory
for that club. They did. It was these play-in rounds, these play-in games. I have to say, every single one of them was exciting to watch.
Every single one.
We go from decision day being an exciting time in MLS to the play-in rounds, which were quite fun. So yeah, Galaxy go down in Seattle 3-2. So the Sounders finally triumph over the LA Galaxy. Clint Dempsey, Nelson Vandez scored in the first half for Seattle. Sebastian Legit and Giassi.
Artist. You just gotta just say it. Don't even think about it. Just dive right into it. Otherwise, you mess it up every time.
They ended up drawing, bringing LA back into it. And it was actually off of some crucial mistakes that Seattle ended up scoring their goals. So that was the weird thing. LA was kind of their own worst enemy.
They did not look good in this game, to be completely honest.
They did not. They did not at all. But anyways, Seattle takes the game 3-2 and move on into the next round, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Why don't you take one of the Eastern Conference games, and I'll get us wrapped up in the last after that.
Well, I'll start with the spanking. Montreal Impact, they had to beat Toronto FC not only in decision day to get a high seed. We knew they were going to make the playoffs. We just didn't know where they were going to be leveled out at. They had to win this game against Toronto. Last week of the season, Toronto needed to win also to get a higher seed than the 6th seed. Montreal ends up winning that game 2-1. Then they go now to the opening round here of the knockouts. Montreal, Toronto again. They know each other very well. It's only been a few days since they played each other. They say, hey, Toronto maybe is going to get their act together. Doesn't work out that way at all. Montreal just completely obliterates Toronto FC. They win 3-0 on this victory. Sebastian Giovinco and company play the entire match. Don't look like they even knew what was going on in that game. Montreal, with that victory, not only assert themselves as a possible MLS Cup, get them through to the next round against now Columbus Crew, but they assert themselves as a very likely MLS Cup representative of the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely, yes. And Drogba just, man.
It's
He's
amazing what
He's
one player does.
Yes.
It's absolutely amazing.
So the highlighted game for me of all these playing rounds, simply because of the shootout, was the Portland Sporting KC game.
22 penalties, an MLS record for amount of penalty kicks taken during a penalty kick shootout.
Comes down to the goalkeepers.
That's the best way to settle it.
Especially
they should have had the coaches take the kicks. That would be great.
Hey, they're both former players.
Exactly.
Why not?
That'd have been a great thing to see. Can you imagine standing like, hey, we're out of it, players. Coaches, you guys are up. Go. That would be awesome.
I have to say, the game itself was a little bit odd. You know, we saw Sporting really hold most of the ball, but Portland was trying to take advantage anytime they had the ball. They ended up out shooting Sporting KC. Rodney Wallace puts Portland up in the second half in the 57th minute. And I have to admit, I was thinking, boy, with the way Portland's playing, they got this. Mm-hmm. Then there was this huge tide turn, and Sporting just kept running at them. 87th minute in regulation, Kevin Ellis ties it up. Now we're 1-1. We go into extra time. Christian Nemeth does his thing, gets his goal in the 96th minute in the first half of extra time. Clock's winding down, and there I am watching this game late at night thinking, oh, another season ending. Here we go.
Yep.
And then Urruti left wide open in the box.
No business.
How Sporting let him be wide open on a cross. He just slams it home. It's 2-2, goes into a shootout.
Did you fly off your couch when that happened?
My entire family was sleeping at that point, so I really had to bite my lip.
Was it like the Nissan commercial? Did you walk outside, get in your car, and then start screaming and hitting the horn and stuff? Basically,
thankfully, I was too tired to get up and do that. But what I really had to calm myself down for was this crazy shootout.
No kidding, yeah.
Miss after miss after miss. Diego Valeri gets up, and you're thinking, man, if there's anybody who's going to put this away, it's Valeri.
Absolutely.
Very weak taken penalty. Give Sporting KC's backup keeper a ton of credit.
He was subbed in specifically for this. John Kempman checking in for that one. And he only played 36 total minutes in the match.
Right. Melia got injured in the match, which was a controversial play. I have to say Rodney Wallace very well could have been thrown out at that point. But at the same time, Nemeth, who ended up putting Sporting KC in the lead, kicked the ball right at Milano's head. So he very well shouldn't have been. So poetic justice for both sides, you know. But listen, here's the crazy thing. Not just miss after miss after miss, but for those of you who saw it, Sporting KC looks like they're going to take the lead. Their player takes the shot. It bounces off one post.
Oh, my gosh.
Goes across the goal, hits the other post. Now, the law of physics says it really should spin into the goal. But
you'd think so.
Pops out.
Oh, my gosh. I was watching that. I was like, what? And I'm like, what just happened? I didn't know what to expect, honestly, and I went back and I had to rewatch the entire shootout again and really diagnose what was going on. And a lot of the shots that were missed and were that one ricochet shot, I was like, there's no business. This should have been in. But you have to credit, those goalkeepers were dialed in.
Those
night. They made some
goalkeepers were
fantastic saves.
I will tell you the thing that I think did Kempen in, however. So Kowarski goes up to take his shot, and Kempen does the old baseball timeout routine, acting like he's got something in his eyes.
Yeah.
You see Kowarski get upset, and you see the ref say, no, go back in the goal.
Yeah.
Kowarski not only takes the shot, but he rips it into the lower right corner, his lower left corner. And then, of course, Kowarski gets in the goal, and what does he do? He saves Kempen's shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're a goalkeeper, it's one thing to save the game-winning shot, but it's another thing when the guy's trying to play mind tricks on you, and you turn around and do a reverse Jedi mind trick.
Exactly. It was beautiful. So, nevertheless, Portland, they advanced 7-6 in this game after drawing 2-2, so Dom Dwyer and company will not be pursuing another MLS Cup title this year.
But they will still be in Champions League because they did win the U.S. Open Cup.
That is true. So, Dom Dwyer and company coming to a random island in the Americas near you.
That's right.
You will. You can
I like
enjoy
how you
them.
said that.
It's pretty much what it comes down to for Champions League play. And then the New England Revolution, they lost to DC United 2-1. Let's be honest, the Revolution. I was saying that they looked good going into this game. They did.
They did.
And to be fair to them, DC United did not look good. This was a game that DC United very well should have lost, but the way that Bill Hamid played completely changed the dynamic of this game. First of all, though, taking aside from Bill Hamid, did anybody else, besides for me, watch Juan Agadello's goal and say, I'm pretty sure Taylor Twellman did that back in 2003 against the Chicago Fire? That goal, Taylor Twellman's goal, was like a fixture on my iPod that I would watch before every game, before like high school and club games. I would always watch that goal to help me get me super psyched about the game.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's the goal that really made you an MLS fan, a New England
Revolution fan. It really
did.
did. Yep, that's what really helped assert myself as a Revolution fan. So I could thank Taylor for that, and the Chicago Fire for not making that save. But I saw that goal from Agadello. I think Agadello executed it a little bit cleaner. I feel like Taylor had to kind of weave his way through guys and then get up and go. But either way, though, with New England jumping out to that early goal, I was like, this is a very good opportunity for them to win the game, build on that momentum, and then things kind of spiraled out of control from there. We saw the great play from DC United. We saw Jermaine Jones get sent off. We saw a lot of no calls, which should have been calls for both sides, not just for the Revolution. There was a lot of no calls for both sides that the ref was kind of trying to figure things out. Was that Mark Geiger that did that game too, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, what's happened to him since the World Cup? He had a wonderful performance at the World Cup, and he get too big for himself?
I think that's must have what it been, because I remember I was watching the game, and they're like, there's referee Mark Geiger. I was like, aha, it is his fault that we're losing. That wasn't exactly what it was, but even still, when I found out, though, that this game was going the way it was, and then you have to credit DC for the way they finished off the game. Bill Hamid stepping up, making so many crucial saves in this match. We even saw that in the opening round of the Eastern Conference semifinals, which we'll get to in a moment, but he stepped up and made so many big saves in that game. Also, credit to DC, they got the goals they needed. They move on accordingly, so the better team won in that game. The better goalkeeper stepped up in that game.
Exactly. We've got so now we're in the conference semifinals, and
big games.
What's neat about this, in both conference we have some big derbies going on.
We do.
We got the Atlantic Cup with DC United and New York Red Bull.
You couldn't have written it up better, honestly.
No, and of course you got Portland and Vancouver. If it wasn't Vancouver, it would have been Portland and Seattle.
Cascadia.
Right. So do the same thing. We'll just do a quick review of these and then do our predictions.
Absolutely.
So Portland and Vancouver. It sounds like it could be not a good night for Portland, drawing 0-0 with Vancouver. At the same time, you could look at, so it's a good night for Vancouver that they go away and they get the draw away from home.
How about that save from David Ousted?
Oh my goodness!
That free kick to the top corner, every single inch of his body on the line, top corner to make that save. Beautiful save.
Man of the match.
Absolutely.
Oh, and the post once again was man of the match.
Goodness.
For Sporting.
I could not believe
Vancouver.
How many times that the post either saved Vancouver or Portland. Their forwards just didn't look in sync that night.
No, they didn't.
Just really didn't look good.
But Portland does have a good thing going into now Vancouver. They could have the advantage on the away goals.
Yes.
They score one goal, and that's a huge thing for Portland. I'm actually going to pick. Should we do picks now?
We can. Yeah, we can go game by game.
Sure. So I am going to take Portland for this. I think they're going to go to Vancouver and eke out a 1-0 win.
I would agree with you on that one. I think that aside from David Ousted playing very well in goal for Vancouver, I didn't see much else from the Whitecaps team that made me really excited for Vancouver to win the game. I would like Vancouver as an organization to progress farther, to continue to build. As I've mentioned multiple times throughout the season, I'm kind of a closet Vancouver Whitecaps fan. But even still, this Portland team, yeah, sure, they were shooting all over the God's great green earth during that game, but they were still getting consistent chances.
Well, and this is one of those rare games that they actually held the ball a lot more than Vancouver. Yeah. We're talking 60-40 on possession.
And this is without guys like Diego Chara on the field for them as well. So they looked exceptionally well with some of their key players not on the field for them. So, yeah, Portland goes through on my vote as well. Simon.
All right.
Let's start with the Columbus Crew and Montreal Impact in the Eastern Conference semifinals out of the 2 games that we've got there. Montreal, you could say it was a surprise. You could say it was not a surprise, with Montreal winning 2-1 in this game against the Columbus Crew. Did you find this result surprising, Simon?
With the way Montreal's been playing, I'm going to say no. Columbus didn't have the strongest of finishes to this season.
They did not, no. And I think some of that, not to step in, I think some of that goes with Kai Kamara, too, who did not score a single goal in the month of October.
I didn't even realize that,
He hasn't
Baxter.
scored a goal since
Wow.
September 22nd.
That's, there you go. As Kamara goes, Columbus goes.
It's true.
And as Drogba goes,
there goes Montreal.
goes.
Whether Drogba, is holding on to the leg of the goalkeeper or not in Columbus, I think they should call that leg gate or something like now with that. People are making a bigger deal out of it than it actually is. I haven't really seen much publicity about it except that it's turned into an awesome meme all over Twitter, basically.
Sure.
But aside from that, though, Montreal, they did what they were supposed to do. They went in to Columbus, dominated the run of play, proved that they are the better team, and...
Was this in Columbus?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was in Montreal. Forgive me. It was in
Yep.
Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Dominated the run of play from Columbus and proved... And Drogba had his hand in every goal in some way, shape, or form. I know he didn't have an assist on the last goal, but he was still a vital part of the defender not closing down Johan Venegas because it was a 2-on-1 situation. The defender was kind of caught in between the two. But how about Michael Parkhurst just completely turning to jello in the midfield?
That's a classic example of somebody playing for the call rather than playing till that whistle blows.
Yeah.
Because he was throwing his arms up already. But, yeah, he just kind of sat there like, what, you're not going to call it? All right,
No,
well, I'm
and
just going to
there
sit here
goes
and pout.
Venegas flying down the field.
Yep.
And that was a beautiful finish from Venegas. But even Patrice Bemer as well, though. What a great finish from him.
Absolute stunner of a great result for Montreal. At the same time, they did let in that critical away goal.
They did, and that was based off of Drogba, too, because Drogba was the one that was playing back on defense, headed the ball perfectly to Higuain, and Higuain was like, oh, perfect, I can one-touch that, no problem. Boom, bottom corner, a cool, calm finish. He's the type of forward that's going to make that goal every time. But Montreal still has that momentum going forward.
They sure do. And... yeah, I'll tell you what, that's who I'm picking to win this one is Montreal.
Yeah, I do too. I am riding the Montreal bandwagon very hard right now. Another 2-1 game, though, was in the Western Conference. It was Seattle and FC Dallas duking it out. Thought this game certainly lived up to the hype, wouldn't you say, Simon?
It sure did. Seattle, I'll tell you what, I thought FC Dallas, for the most part, dominated this game.
Yes.
Seattle, obviously, they ended up winning. Clint Dempsey, let me just say, it's amazing what happens when Clint Dempsey actually wants to play the game.
Well, some of it I felt had to do with the fact that he played at the left mid for that whole game.
That's true.
Where he used to play in the U.S. men's national team system.
That's
and look
right.
how much success he had back then, and now how much success he's having now.
That's right. Maybe he just has more joy, not having the pressure of having to be the one
exactly
up front. But the whole team played well. Like I said, it was a strong match by Seattle.
It was.
All over. Ivan Schitz scored the Seattle's goal in the 67th minute to add to Dempsey's total, which gave them the 2-1 win. But I will tell you what, Fabian Castillo was giving those Seattle defenders problems all night.
He was.
Brad Evans, Zach Scott. He was getting around them all night long. Zach Lloyd, on the other hand, had a bit of a rough game on defense for FC Dallas. So to me, that is the key to this game, is can Dempsey and Martins take advantage of that Zach Lloyd-led defense?
Yes. Matt Hedges is not doing a terrible job back there also, but he's still fairly young.
Now, I give credit to Oscar Pereira for playing Gonzalez in goal that whole game. He's a younger keeper, but what a way to get him involved right off the bat in important games.
It is.
And to me, he was actually having the game of his life. And those goals were not anything on he wasn't culpable on either of those goals.
No, the shot from Ivan Stich was just a fantastic blast to the far post that I don't think any goalkeeper really could have got to. And then the free kick from Clint Dempsey was just a vintage Clint Dempsey free kick to the far post.
It was, and maybe he could have set up his wall a little better, but to me, when I was looking at the angles, he had, I'm talking about Gonzalez, had that post covered.
He did. It was just a beautiful struck ball.
So I'll tell you what, I think that Dallas just has a few things to work out. I think they can get through. I have not seen a team get through Seattle's defense like that, like FC Dallas did with the speed of Fabian Castillo.
What a great
just
player.
Amazing. I think FC Dallas comes back and takes this series.
Okay.
And now, keep in mind, I had predicted that Seattle would win MLS Cup this year.
You did, and I think on that accord is why I'm going to follow up and say that Seattle's a smart team. They're going to ride this 2-goals-to-1 advantage, take that down to Dallas, and they're going to end up winning. They're not going to win pretty, but they're going to find a way to win, likely off of a Martins goal or maybe a midfield player that you wouldn't expect to score.
I'll tell you what, it would break my heart if Seattle goes down there and just plays bunker ball. I don't want to see. That's the only problem with two-leg aggregates is you get a team like Seattle that goes up, and same thing with Montreal. You'd hate to see them, Montreal go to Columbus, Seattle go to FC Dallas, and just bunker it in. I can't imagine a Siggy Schmid club actually doing that, but I could see Columbus doing that.
Anything is possible. Yeah, no, Columbus might need to do something like that. But so we'll see what happens. I've got Seattle in that game. You've got FC Dallas, although I really do like what FC Dallas is going on right now for them. The New York Red Bulls and DC United was the final game in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Red Bulls and DCU looked pretty boring, honestly. That entire game was fairly boring. Not a lot of opportunities for either team. This is the first time DC United has not registered a shot on target in their existence in the playoffs.
Isn't it amazing? They go from beating New England 2-1, who you'd think New England's going to definitely, if not do well against DC United. I mean, I thought actually New England might destroy them.
I did too.
I picked DC United just for the sake of they're playing poorly, so they're going to put in a good game.
Yeah.
But
no one can fault you for that, though.
No, right. But to not register a shot on goal
for the first time in team playoff history.
Right.
This isn't the first time this season. This is the first time in team history. This is a DC United team that has won MLS Cups, that has gone so far and has been a storied franchise. This isn't just an expansion team. This is a legendary team in Major League Soccer history,
and at home as well.
Yeah. They weren't down in a CONCACAF Champions League game. They weren't off in some foreign stadium. This is RFK Stadium, regardless of what's still standing of that stadium. They managed to go in and not register a single shot.
Can I just say, I'm always so confused with these stadium announcements. We heard long ago now, about a year ago, that DC was getting the stadium.
Yeah, I thought they were.
And then it was, well, we got some few things to do yet with the city. We got a few more things to do yet with the city board. A few more things. I have no idea where that stadium stands because in my mind it should have already been built.
It doesn't stand anywhere right now.
Great point.
That's what I do. It's little things, Simon. All right, so it was Dax McCarty, though, with that game-winning goal. Completely unmarked, running through off of that set piece. A well-done design play by Sasha Kljestan to swing that ball in. And a beautiful, beautiful goal from him. The Red Bulls lead 1-0 going into that, going home. Is it Red Bulls taking the victory?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They got this.
So I like a Montreal New York Eastern Conference final.
Either way, I'm excited. Sunday, November 8th. 4 more games of MLS playoffs to watch.
Let's see. They will start as early as 3 p.m. with New York, D.C. Then they goes to that game is on ESPN Deportes. Then 5 p.m. Columbus, Montreal, ESPN TSN2, RDS1, and ESPN Deportes. Then you've got Vancouver, FC Dallas, Seattle. That game is at 7:30 Eastern, FS1, TS1, Fox Deportes. And then the final nightcap game is Portland and Vancouver. That is at 10 p.m. Eastern on FS1, TS1, RDS1, and Fox Deportes. Check them out. Tweet at us. Let us know your predictions at Baxter Colburn, at Simon Provant, at 2 Up Front Soccer. We'll be right back with our I Believe segments and closing out the show. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to another edition of Two Up Front, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Baxter Colburn.
This is Simon Provan.
All right, Simon, we've had a great show so far, talking about all kinds of crazy things in the soccer world, and it never gets tiring, does it, Simon?
It never does.
Absolutely. Well, it is the end of the show, which brings about one of our favorite segments. It is our I Believe segment, and the way it works is that Simon and I both offer statements about something that we believe will happen in the soccer world, and we kind of hash it out a little bit if we decide to. If not, if we're really tired, like we are kind of tonight, we're just like, all right, sounds good, and then we just go and close out the show. So, Simon, the floor is yours, sir, if you'd like to begin.
I do. I believe that Sepp Blatter will not be president in February. There are ways that he could be. But to take it a step further, I believe that FIFA will fall under control of a European once again.
Ooh,
so I do believe we'll have a European president.
Okay. I believe that as much hype that is riding around the Montreal Impact, they will make it to the Eastern Conference Championships, but the New York Red Bulls will ultimately pick them apart, and the Red Bulls will go to MLS Cup.
I like that, I believe. I've been picking the Red Bulls for a while now to make it all the way to MLS Cup, so I'm not going to argue with that, but I like how you said that Montreal was kind of hit that New York Red Bulls wall.
They will, and I like what they've got, but at the end of the day, the Red Bulls are just the better team.
Well, it's exciting to see, too. I mean, we were talking about before the season, what the heck's going to happen to the Red Bulls, and whether it's through that crisis that they really found solidarity, whatever it is, they're looking like a great club.
Absolutely. Well, we are looking like a great show as well. And remember, you can get us right here on Sports Radio America from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern on sportsradioamerica.com, live 365, and tune in. And you can also get us on demand. Share our podcast with your friends. Share it find it on iTunes. You can listen to it at work on iHeartRadio, and you can listen to it right here on Spreaker.com as well. And you can also go find us on social media as well.
Yes, we're on Facebook, 2 Up Front. We're on Twitter at 2 Up Front Soccer. On Instagram at 2 Up Front Soccer. I am at Simon Provan. He is at Baxter Colburn.
Absolutely.
I heard, though, you're changing your feed to at NananaBooBoo.
Exactly. Hashtag at NananaBooBoo. Hashtag Team Jose. Hashtag... I'm out of hashtags. I don't know. I might need to.
Browns?
I wonder if NananaBooBoo is available on Twitter. I might need to change.
Have to check it out.
I might have to check and change that. I could do it. Maybe put that as my Twitter bio. Just be like hashtag NananaBooBoo. I like it. We'll make it happen. All right.
May have to be NananaBooBoo 2.
That's true. Underscore. Right. Nana underscore boo boo 2. Something like that.
Up front.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you say we're tired? We're getting a little slap happy here.
Woo! We love it. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition. He's Simon Provan. I am Baxter Colburn. Until again next week, folks, with our manager being the one above, we are 2 Up Front.